Okay, class, welcome to lesson 2 about rural settlements in Rwanda. And under this lesson, we are going to look at the characteristics of rural settlements in Rwanda and factors that influence rural settlements in Rwanda. What are the features of our rural settlements in Rwanda? Number one, our rural areas are sparsely populated. If you compare these rural areas with urban areas, we still have sparse population, low population in our rural areas. It's not dense like that in towns. Then we have poor transport networks in our villages. There are poor roads, feeder roads, footpaths. You can't get enough tarmac roads. Then we have limited social amenities. Our villages have low standard hospitals, low standard schools, and other social infrastructures. Then we have less developed economy. Our rural areas and settlements are underdeveloped in terms of economy. They don't earn a living in terms of earning money because there is no business, there is no trade and commerce like in towns. Our villagers only depend on agriculture, which is even carried out on a subsistence basis for home consumption. Next, there is cultural rigidity. Our people in villages are still rigid. They still believe traditionally. Others can even be weak. We have poor sanitation. Our villagers have poor toilets. Even some families don't have. They don't wash their hands. They sleep with domestic animals in the same houses. So sanitation is very poor compared to urban settlements, where we use flush toilets, people wash their hands before eating and after toilet, etc. Unemployment. Most of our villagers from our rural settlements don't have jobs because they survive on subsistence agriculture and there are no industries in villages to give jobs to these people. Low standards of living. Our people in our villages live low standards of living. They eat poorly, they sleep poorly, no medication. Most of the houses in villages are semi-permanent. They have poor houses, mud houses. Then factors influencing rural settlements. Factors that influence rural settlements. This one is a mixture of why people move to stay in rural settlements. And at the same time, there are the reasons why people stay, the types of settlements they stay in. Why is it that some places in rural areas are sparsely populated, others are settled on? High costs of living in urban areas. People move from urban areas to rural areas. This is urban-rural migration. Because in urban areas, there is high cost of living. The cost to live and to survive is high. Prices of commodities are high. Prices for rent are high. And therefore people decide to go back to villages. Then need for space to run business. People move from urban areas to villages to look for enough space in villages for business. For example, ranching, dairy farming, etc. People need enough space, and this causes rural settlements. We have soils. Our soils in rural areas are still fertile. People need to cultivate, get enough food, and sell to urban areas. And therefore, they come back to our rural settlements looking for fertile soils. Agricultural activities, urban centers. In urban centers, we don't practice agriculture. Agriculture is well practiced in our rural areas, and therefore people still live in our rural areas because they need to practice animal keeping and crop growing. Size of the families. Big families and the need to live with members of the extended families requires big space for settlements, and therefore this space can only be found in rural areas. We have climate. Although Rwanda has favorable climatic conditions throughout the country, areas which receive heavy rainfall in our rural areas are densely populated compared to areas with low rainfall. So that's why we have a type of settlement like sparse and dense or nucleated. Lack of employment. Most people settle in rural areas because they don't have jobs in towns. Drainage. Waterlogged areas are sparsely or not settled at all. They have zero or nil settlement because of poor drainage, and they are breeding grounds for mosquitoes which can spread diseases. Transport. For example, we have this type of settlement in linear near roads. So areas in rural areas which at least have maram and tarmac road, if it is there, you find people congested near those transport networks. And areas without these transport networks, you find them sparsely populated. Then we have government policy, like we have midugudu settlements in our rural areas because it is the government policy or plan. Then relief in our villages or rural areas is not uniform. So that's why you find on steep slopes, sparse settlements. On gentle and lowland areas, at least nucleated settlements, because people fear soil erosion, mass wasting on steep slopes. And deep in valleys, also people avoid. You find low settlements, low population, because of fear of maybe floods. Thank you.